Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. My name is Vanessa DeKukuk. I am the Global Training Manager here at 2020, and I really appreciate you taking the time to get a little bit better at 2020 Worksheet. This session is full of tips. You'll want to grab a pen and paper and take some notes. So I think you'll agree that 2020 Worksheet is one of the most important tools in our industry today. So let's make sure that we're making the most of it. Now, to demonstrate a few of these examples, I'm going to be leveraging different typicals from various websites. Many of these different manufacturers have different scenarios, and in almost every case, the manufacturer itself doesn't matter. The tools can be used on many of these as examples. So first up, I'm going to leverage the AIS website and grab an SP4 file right from their website. So again, they have a lot of different typicals, this downloaded. So all I'm going to do is literally take this and drag it and drop it into Worksheet. I know this is kind of a cheating way to grab that file. It's literally opening it from my downloads folder, but we just want to preview it and look at a really quick, easy tool. So first up, notice because it was an SP4 file or a worksheet file, it was very easy for it to read all the information. Sometimes when you open up files like this, it's not a bad idea to update against catalog, just because you don't know when that file was created, and it did look like it updated a couple things, for instance, to the newest price information. But what I want to do is take a look and see, a lot of times with typicals, they're idea starters. They get you probably close to something that might fit your client, but quite often we would like a variation to it. So for example, what if I was looking at this rectangular table? You can see the size 48 by 144. What if I was curious if there was another size bigger or smaller? One of the easiest ways to do that is to right click on that item and look for Explore, because Explore will take you to that specific table in the content so you can see all of the similar products. So now I can see that 144 was the max size, but I have lots of different sizes smaller. In the next example, in all seating, not only can you see the product in a really great visual, but you can also specify it right on their website. And then one of the last options is to download the SIF. So I've already picked a few of the finishes, so let's download the SIF file. And again, it's going out to my downloads folder. So I'm gonna take that and just drag and drop it here and into this project. What that did is it just added the one chair. In the first example, we had a whole typical. In the second example, I'm just looking at one of that item, but a couple things we'll want to look at. Because I pulled that from that SIF file, do you notice that there's a few details missing? Sometimes you'll get question marks. Sometimes you'll notice some fields are blank. It's fine. We can fix it. It just takes a minute to kind of look at it and see what are the attributes that are missing that are really important to Worksheet. And usually for attributes, the most critical ones are going to be manufacturer code, catalog code, and part number. So if you know the manufacturer code, that we could just type that in. If you don't know it off the top of your head, you can always go up to the content. Just use the part number. You already have it right in front of you because it was pulled in from the SIF file. And so this will tell me all of the manufacturer code and catalog codes that that particular product is available in. So this one was ASC, but notice it says ASC in the catalog code, so that's interesting. Sometimes it will put the manufacturer code in the catalog code field. So did you notice how when I quick searched to the item though, I could narrow it down and see that we could either pull this from the GAL catalog, which is their GSA catalog, or we could have also pulled it from their ALL catalog, which we'll consider that kind of I'll call it their standard catalog. Now, if you look a little bit closer, did you see that there's not a part number that matches this exactly, this 84012? However, you can see the letters and numbers that follow are the first set of options in the option line, interestingly enough. So if I come in here and say, hey, okay, we've got the manufacturer code is ASC, the catalog code is ALL. This is getting closer, but now all I need to do is type in the part number field, and the quick search works in this section as well. And we knew that the T7 was the next couple characters in this. So we could do dash T7. Then it updates everything else accordingly. Okay, and now for our next example, let's take a look at the Daran website. Look at this beautiful typical. Now some websites, you'll notice in their typicals, they will offer both CIF files and SP4 files. If I have the choice, I'm usually going to try the SP4 file first, just because it will have the most attributes available to show in 2020 worksheet. But the CIF file can still be used. You just might have to clean up the attributes a little bit if it's missing anything. In this case, it did zip the file, so sometimes there's going to be just a couple extra clicks. In my case, I can just double click on this and it will open it right up in Worksheet. So when I come over, here is the Daran file. Now, a couple things. This one, because again, it was an SP4 file, it did open up with a specific template. So if you're ever missing details, you can turn those on pretty easily. For example, maybe I really want to show off this beautiful product. So I'm going to right click in the columns, take a look and see if I can turn on the preview column. That just helps me, kind of visualize a little bit better and see some of the product that I'm specifying. This one I can also quickly see that there's a few items that need to be updated because I have the update against catalog symbol. So it's always a good practice to update the items to make sure they're looking at today's current price. So now I have green check marks to the list. Now in this case, there are quite a few finishes selected, but many of the finishes, notice they say no selection of accessories, so don't forget to go back in and select if you do want accessories or grommets or modesty panels and all of those details, because again, this is just the typical that they've provided. So here I'm on the NWork website. They have a lot of beautiful typicals out here. I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of these. This one gives it to me in a CIF file, but again, it's zipped. So notice here's both the CIF and the SP4. So I'm gonna select the SP4 file and open that up. Here is this typical. I'm gonna do quite a few things to this one. First of all, notice as I look through the list, there are some details in the specification. Some of the things are specified, but there are quite a few skipped options. So quite often I do want to go in and specify everything, but let's do it as fast as possible. So one of the things I'm going to do is update against catalog. Remember, always a good practice. If it's especially a file that you haven't created, we want to make sure that it's the most up-to-date as possible. And then next thing I'm going to do is actually go over to global options. If you've never used global options before, it is a huge time saver, but there are a couple of things you'll want to look for. Let me just minimize a couple of my windows out of my way just so we can take advantage of the screen space. The first thing you'll notice is when it pulls everything into global options is it takes all your finishes, in this case from the NWork catalog, and it puts them in alphabetical order, but by the name of the option group. So in some cases that might not make a whole lot of sense because we are so used to reading things per product, where in global options, this isn't necessarily organizing it by type of product, it's just organizing it alphabetically. So let's make our life a little bit easier. We're gonna group this by something more than just that manufacturer code of NWork. We're also going to come down and check the category column. Now, category column is an attribute that quite a few manufacturers use just as a generic descriptor of that product. Is it an accessory, a pedestal, a table? You get the idea. So now this really helps me kind of think about the product by product, because so often we can associate the finish very quickly. So let's say I come through and I'm going to skip right to this laminate for pedestal. As soon as I pick on one of the skipped options, I can see what I'm applying it to, and then all of my finishes are available on the right. So let's say it's going to be the Wilson Art Gray Elm. You'll notice that once I've selected that, what global options does, and this is the best part, is it goes through the rest of my finishes, and if that finish is applicable, which in this case it was also available on the credenza top, and it's also available on the boat top, and it's also available on the affinity cubby. So in all of those instances, the software automatically recognized it. It's quickly optioning it to match. So all I need to do is verify that by just clicking on those red flags, because so often our finishes are going to be reused again and again. So now all I have to focus on are anytime it says skipped option or this little blue question mark. Let's say we want, I don't know, the medium tone finish, and then the first option that I skipped earlier. Let's say it's this color in the calendar finish. Okay, now I jump back to Worksheet, say yes to essentially save my changes, and notice my green check marks here, and those finishes have come over, including Wilson Art Gray Elm, Wilson Art Gray Elm. That was really the one that was leveraged more often. Now, in that example, this was very easy because we're talking about a very small typical. Quite often on large projects that can feel very overwhelming, but just don't forget when you go to global options, you can group by different things to help you keep that project organized, or maybe just focus on certain types of parts and pieces. You don't have to option everything in this window. Think all your panel fabrics or all of your work surface finishes. You get all of that done because they all match. Jump back to Worksheet and at least part of the project is complete. All right, next up we're going to look at etc. This is a newer line that is so fun under the Kimball national brand. And if I come in, you'll notice there's a SIF download. So let's grab that. Again, because we opened it up as a SIF, there are a few attributes that I need. In this case, I can see the manufacturer code is blank, but because I have more than one item, instead of just typing it in individually, I'd encourage you to use the assign feature. In this case, I have 3 lines. I click on the assign tool and say the manufacturer is, fill that in. Again, as you're more comfortable with your manufacturers, you'll know these by heart. Now that I have that assigned, I can update against catalog and it'll go look at that and see, found all of the items. It's got all of the pricing. That's looking good. Now, one other thing about this catalog, let me open the content back up and let's explore out to one of these products. When I come back to explore, it takes me to the item. On many of the national brand items, you'll see this little symbol next to the piece of paper. And this little symbol stands for service parts. Occasionally, there are additional service parts that you can order for a product. That's usually a subset of what that product is, or maybe replacement parts. In that case, here is an example with a hardware kit. All I need to do is select that particular product number and send it to the worksheet that I'm working in, and it can add that as a line to be ordered. Okay, for the next example, let's jump over to the Herman Miller website. Now on their website, let's grab the SIF file. Okay, some of these next things, you've already seen me do this. Let's assign the manufacturer code HMI to everything, and quite a few of these do have the catalog code, so let's update against catalog and see what comes in. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now, even though I have everything updated, you'll notice the preview does not automatically come in, so let's go up to Worksheet and update preview images. This is a great way to pull in as many images as possible. These are pulling from the catalog, so some of them look great. Some of them, well, like this poor chair, he's sitting sideways. So let's adjust that. We don't need it to show us the side of the chair. So a couple different ways I could do this, but a quick one, if I just right click on the item, go under properties, look under visualization, this gives me control to either adjust this graphic and say, let's use that for the item preview. Or if I have an image that I'd like to replace that with, I could also do that in the properties window too. So if I jump out to visualization, I could load my own image. I just need to pull this up from a folder that I already have it saved. So in this case, I already have this image saved in my downloads folder. Say use this image for preview, there we go. Now, obviously I probably wouldn't do this for every item, but if there's some key things that we really want the client to recognize, or maybe some custom items, we could always pull our own images in there as well. Next up, let's jump out to the Han catalog. On the Han website, they've got a really nice configurator that again shows all of the options on this right-hand side, a lot of the finishes where you can see it applied and show a great image. But of course, we're going to look for and download a SIF file. Once that SIF file is available, let's go take a look. And here is that chair. Now let's mock this example up a little bit more. First, I see a few of the details missing, so I'm going to cheat and just look up that part number in the catalog. So it filled in my manufacturer code and catalog code for me. And let's say that we knew that we were going to order 20 of these chairs. Well, this was great because notice right from that CIF file, it pulled in all the finishes that I had picked on the website. But what if during the project, the client comes back and decides to use both of their corporate colors in these chairs? So maybe I need to do 10 in the goldenrod and 10 in a different color. So what I'd like to do is actually split this line. Of course, we could copy and paste it. That's what most people do, but we want to do this the fastest way. So jump up to item, look for split. The really nice thing about split is it does the math for you if you have something other than just 10 and 10. But now I could come back in and I could always just re-specify the one product or the one line of 10 instead of doing the goldenrod. Maybe peacock is their other brand color. And there we go. Now we have 10 in the peacock color and 10 in the goldenrod color. Before I borrow another typical, you'll notice that I have quite a few files open because I just keep adding more and more examples. So when you've got multiple projects, multiple floors, multiple phases in a project, that's great. But just for right now, I'm going to go ahead and close all of those because it's probably going to get more confusing than I need. But notice instead of just hitting close or Xing out of each one, I can hit close all. It will ask me to save anything if I hadn't saved it up to that point. So just so you know, you can close multiple files if you need to. Next, though, we're going to jump over to the Kimball website, and as you can see, they have a CIF file available. Let's take this example and open it up in Worksheet. And this was a much more complete typical with many products. So next thing I want to do is talk about finishes again, but a little different than what we saw earlier with global options. So often we are specifying similar product or a product that's kind of similar on different items. So let's go ahead and look at an example of that. I'm going to step in and let's specify this storage piece. I'm going to come through and let's do the wallaby finish for the laminate. Let's finish that up. Okay, so laminate finishes, probably something that's going to be reusable, but maybe I want to specify exactly where those items are going to go. Have you ever tried this copy options feature? When I do copy options, the neat thing is it pulls it over this clipboard where I can take those finishes and literally drag and drop them onto other products as needed. Now, notice I'm doing this super fast and just dropping it anywhere. Luckily, the two items I dropped it onto have those finishes, but notice they're not 100% done yet because I don't have a pull option or this top laminate. So you want to be a little careful of where you're dragging and dropping it to. Now, if I happen to drag and drop it onto an item that it does not apply to, the nice thing is Worksheet will recognize that. It did not automatically try to apply my laminate finish to this trim paint. So it does know when it's applicable to certain items. Now, obviously, I still have a lot of work to do, but this is a great way to really stay focused, especially if you've got a lot of finishes in a project. All right, next up, we have an example from the Knoll website. So in this scenario, it's going to be a little bit bigger because I'm actually going to take you outside of Worksheet for a moment, but let's grab their 2020 worksheet file here, and you'll notice if you look at the file name or when I open this up, it's actually more than just an SP4 file. It's a .visual.sp4, and that's important because if a manufacturer provides you with a .visual SP4, that means I can open it up in Visual Impression. Now, that file type actually originates from a drawing, so whether you're using 2020 Cap, 2020 Cap Complete, or 2020 Giza, and if that file then gets saved as a .visual, then I'll be able to actually see that typical in this visualization, make changes, and prepare it and make it really unique for that client, right? So here is that typical, beautiful, looks great. It already has a few finishes selected. Of course, if we want to continue to make changes to it, we can. Of course, I'm gonna step in and pick the easy one. So let's change this from an orange to a green. We can apply this to multiple items. If you haven't used visual impression before, you'll definitely want to check it out. You can see how easy this is. If you haven't used visual impression for a while, one of the newest features is now you can come in and toggle on furniture movement, which allows you to take an item and actually move it within this. So I can rotate that chair so that they can see that better, or rotate an item that maybe you want to look a little more lived in. But if I were to close this and apply the changes, it will push these changes back to visual impression. So now not only do I have the orange color for the chair, but I will also have the green color in my options for this project. Okay, our next example, let's jump over to the Maxon website, and I will grab their SP4 file and open this up. Now when I open up this example, you'll notice that there are a lot of green check marks, and typically a green check mark represents something that's complete. However, be very careful with that, because quite a few manufacturers have the first option in their list is represented by the tilde symbol and then says undecided. So what happens is it looks like it's complete, but there's still an option that needs to be picked, when so often many of us are looking for the painter's palette to recognize something that's not finished. So all of that to be said, sometimes these finishes are not quite in line with what you're trying to do for your client. So let's cheat a little bit. Let's leverage as many products as we can. So I'll select everything in this list. And if I right click, I can actually delete the options off of the products. I'm not going to delete the selected items because I maybe still want that typical. But if I delete the options, I can start this from scratch and then very, very easily go through the whole project and specify it either with our copy and paste from the task pane like we were using earlier, or global options like we used earlier. But notice here was my goal. I was looking for all of those painter palettes, so that way I could kind of recognize, oh yeah, skipped option, skipped option, skipped option. Those are the lines that I need to take the time to make sure that they are unique to my client. Okay, we have just a few examples left in this next one with the national website. We can browse their typicals and grab one of their spec files. In the zip, let's open up the CIF file. Okay, the neat thing about this catalog, let's come in and assign the manufacturer code is NOF. Let's apply that. Update against catalog. Okay, now we have all these attributes. So a lot of your manufacturers offer a lot of flexibility when pricing product. Now in this example, when I'm using the national catalog, let's go ahead and explore out to one of their products. What I want to show is when I'm at this product level, notice you'll see this little code here that says zone 1 and then effective, and it gives you a date. If I were to change that date, notice zone 2 was pricing from mid-December of 2019 up till February. Pricing zone 3 was back in 2018. So sometimes you might have some contract pricing that needs to go back to a different zone, and it's really easy to do that here in Worksheet, because now all I need to do is turn on the column that is reflecting that price zone. So for the PZ column right here, it says 1. If I were to change that to 2, so line number 1 at the moment is 1321, but if I update against catalog, it is now 1270. So when you have projects and you're guaranteeing certain pricing and you're working with your manufacturer on that price, you might be able to leverage the price zone to control that. Next up, let's go over to the Sit On It seating catalog. Beautiful typical. Let's go ahead and download the CIF file for this and open that up inside of Worksheet. Okay, a lot of the attributes came in. This looks really good. Let's just update this against catalog and apply some of the finishes. Now for time, I'm gonna go right over to global options and select a few of these things. Let's maybe do like a grade 1 in a standard color. We'll do Malibu Cobalt, no Cal 133, just do a single color, keep it kind of simple, and how about dash? You guys can judge my color selections. I'm just clicking really fast through here. Now I've got quite a bit of this specified. Let's see if I can get everything. Okay, green check marks to the list looks great. Say yes. Now there's my project, looks great. Now let's say that we decide to bring in one more item. So I'm gonna go ahead and explore out and just grab a different, let's say I need like this corner table. Now, if I drag and drop in a new item, of course, this new item does not have finishes, but just know that that is living in this project without finishes. Let's say that I come through and just want to double check before I'm ready to either place this order or create my quote. Let's update against catalog. Have you ever noticed that there's a checkbox over here on the right that lets you do one additional validation to make sure that all of your items are completely up to date? Now you might go, but I'm in the update against catalog function, so isn't that already doing it? But here's what validate does. When I hit update, it goes through the update, tells me whatever options were changed, and then I have one that's still incomplete. Yep, we know that. But when I say okay, it opens up this validate worksheet field. Now, validate worksheet is a way that you can go in and set up criteria of things that you want worksheet to be your second pair of eyes and double check. Did you complete all your options? Have you done your discounting yet? Right now, do you have any items you accidentally changed the quantity to 0? Do you have some things without any tagging or alias values? If any of these things are really important for you to double check or easy to miss, we can check any of these. For right now, I just have incomplete options because I'm really kind of focused on options, and I can either flag those items or just click on that and it takes me to the line to remind me that this is the one I need to finish. Now, this is a nice small worksheet. I need to scroll like once or twice to get through it, but on so many of our projects, we're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and we might miss this one line. So I want to make sure to specify that last product. Let's go ahead and, I think I made that a different color than the previous, but that's okay. Now that this is done, notice if I go update against catalog and I leave validate items checked, this time there's nothing in the list to validate. Okay, so validate is just a double check to make sure, did we complete our options? Did we do our discounting? Did we tag everything? It's a double check for you. All right, let's grab another example. This time it'll be from the Technion typicals, and we can download their zip file. And this includes a variety of things, but again, we'll look for things like an SP4 file or the zip file. Here is a visual of an associated visual.sp4 file. So this one could be opened up in Visual Impression like we did earlier. For right now, let's just take a look at it as is. Now, in this scenario, I would like to kind of understand a little bit more about the product. Let's say I'm not familiar with this catalog, and you'll notice that it might be a little overwhelming to look at all of these product numbers and just see skipped option, skipped option, skipped option, skipped option. Well, what is that option? Is it a fabric? Is it a foot style on the chair? Is it a leg option? I have no idea. So let's turn on a couple additional things. If I go under columns and I look a little more specifically, I can turn on the option group field, and under option group you'll see now this helps describe which options I'm missing. Now, even before I go in and specify these lines, I have an idea of the types of finishes I'm going to need to select. It's the same thing you'll see at the top of the list here. Let's come through and select a couple of these finishes real quickly. And I'm just gonna hit finish. I know I'm not 100% complete, but the other important detail that might be helpful is to also come through and think about the pricing. Right now, we only have list on, but what if you turned on unit list? Because when I specified that fabric grade 9, you'll notice that there was an upcharge associated to that. And when you don't have the unit list column on, it's kind of hard to see that because it just bundles it all into the list price. So two really critical pieces. And I find it's just really helpful when it's a product line I'm not super familiar with. Okay, for our last example, let's borrow a typical from the Trendway website. And in this scenario, I would really like to organize my project in a way that I can save time. So I'm gonna just grab this SP4 file. Let's take a look at it. How complex is this one? Okay, here's my Trendway file, and what I'm looking at is there's things from a few different catalogs. This T2U catalog, the TSG catalog, the TBL catalog. So let's leverage that a little bit. First of all, this took quite a few scrolls to get through the whole project. And let's say that you're not quite ready to talk about finishes yet with your client. There's still a couple other things to decide. So I can go up to View, I can look under Rows, and you can control this however you want. You can turn off option lines and think about how many pages you're going to save printing. I can just turn that off, a few less scrolls. If I'd like to organize this a little bit better, and let me go back and turn that back on, I can go back to rows and turn my options back on if I miss them. But I would like to sort this project a little bit better. And because we have multiple catalogs, this is a great way to start it out. I can use the multi-sort feature, say let's sort it out by catalog, and while we're sorting, give me a subtotal. If you ever get, a great discount because you're purchasing so much of a certain type of product, this is a great way to get a quick scenario or a summary of that. And then even better, if I go to View, remember we could go rows and turn off products to shorten this list up, but even better than that, I can go rows and I can turn off the white lines or those product lines, and it just leaves me with the subtotals. So this, you're kind of putting in your project manager hat for a second because you're looking very, very high level. But imagine if you had tagged a project a certain way, or you have certain criteria that you want to just look at it exclusively. A lot of that is controllable right through this View menu. Okay, there are a lot of tips that I just shared today, but Worksheet is so powerful and it really should save you a lot of time on your projects. I hope you were able to take away a couple new tricks for your tool belt. Thank you so much for joining the session today. I hope you were able to learn a couple new things. If you have any questions about 2020 Worksheet, we do offer training classes, both online with an instructor, or we just announced our self-paced on-demand classes. You can follow these types of classes for up to 6 months on your own time. I really appreciate you taking the time today. And if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to the training team at office.training@2020spaces.com.